Buying real estate and raising money is so easy now compared to operating deals on a day-to-day basis, making sure that the business plan is being implemented correctly, making sure that your company has a good systems and processes. Well, I thought the biggest problem I had was buying real estate. Well, no, those opportunities are everywhere.
The Apartment Gurus podcast is brought to you by Greenlight Equity Group, an apartment acquisitions and holdings firm co-founded by Carl York and Tate Siemer, host of this show. We offer you the opportunity to be an owner of cash-flowing, wealth-growing apartments without the headaches of being a landlord. These assets are recession-resistant, risk-mitigated, offer significant tax advantages, and are a great alternative to the stock market. Ready to check it out? Go to www.investwithgreenlight.com today to book a personal consultation with Carl or Tate. Again, that's investwithgreenlight.com. We look forward to meeting you. Welcome to The Apartment Gurus, where twice a week, host Tate Siemer brings you deep dive interviews with the wisest gurus in the apartment investing industry. These experts are sure to create game-changing value and inspiration designed to catapult your business to the next level. Be sure to reach out to Tate at www.investwithgreenlight.com for access to his investor portal and Calendly link. And now, here is Tate Siemer and the Apartment Gurus.
Welcome, everybody, back. Another episode of the Apartment Gurus podcast. And, you know, the beauty of recording podcasts, there's a number of things I think are beautiful. One is just getting to hang out with amazing guests and you know, thought leaders, influencers, and intellectual entrepreneurs that are out to add value. And today is one of those days. Again, we have, you know, awesome guests on the show. Pretty much every episode is an interview-based episode. The other is that you're recording evergreen content that's always out there, right? And it's timeless in that sense, but it's not always timeless when you're recording the episode. And this morning is here in Sayulita, Mexico, where I am. It's early, man. This is an early one for me, 7 a.m. But you know, when you got the celebrities to chase down, sometimes you got to conform to the schedule that's necessary. And today we have Tim Vitale on the show, who is this is one of the honored second-time guests on the show. We were just talking before recording, Tim, and almost to the day, this is our 2-year anniversary with having you on the Apartment Gurus, and so we've got a lot to catch up on. Now, August of 22 to August of 24 has been quite a momentous period of time in our industry in the multifamily space, and syndication and equity and capital and interest rates and debt. And so really looking forward to catching up. Of course, I keep tabs on you pretty closely anyway. Your podcast, Making Moves in Multifamily, is amazing. But yeah, so Tim's really excited to have you here on the show, and looking forward to unpacking the last couple of years, and I think more importantly, kind of catching up with where you are now and what you're up to moving forward here in this space. So welcome, sir. Good to see you again.
Man. Oh, thanks for having me again. I appreciate it. And yeah, when you had made that reach out and I went back and I listened to my podcast, I listened to it. I was like, damn, man, like all of the stuff we were talking about is so relevant still today. It was such a genuine podcast interview. I really enjoyed it. And that's why I was so excited to come back. And, you know, this podcast interview will be a little different because you're right. I mean, where I'm at in my career today versus where I was 2 years ago is significantly different. The market is significantly different. And let's talk about like real stuff, you know, not just like mindset and growth and this and the other thing. Yeah. We're going to talk about real stuff, like how the industry's been, ups, downs, wins, losses, et cetera, and so forth. So I'm stoked for this, man. We're going to have a good time today.
I love it. Yeah. And I can geek out on the mindset stuff all day, every day, and often do. But getting down to brass tacks and talking about like what's working, what's not working. And I think let's start right there, Tim. So, you know, and by the way, for those of you that go back and listen to the first episode with Tim from August of 2022, for kind of the backstory on Tim and where he came from. He was a year out of retiring from his W-2. Retiring it's not really
bad
a good
word. Yeah,
bad word. Quitting his W-2.
Let's now than ever.
Right. But yeah, so you were a year out at that point. So you're 3 years out now. But let's just start with something kind of specific here. What, if anything, about your thesis in multifamily, or another way of asking that would be like your buy box, right? Like what assets you're targeting and how you're targeting them and how you're assembling your portfolio. How has that changed, over the last couple of years, if at all? I would imagine it's changed somewhat.
Oh, it's changed significantly. So 2 years ago when we did this podcast, I was, going after market rate properties in target places in North and South Carolina, still doing that today, but our equity is coming from different spaces, and the type of asset and the age or vintage of the asset that we're going after is different as well. 2 years ago, we were buying market rate stuff. The market got so competitively hot. We bought a lot of great deals, actually. And we still own a lot of those. We haven't sold too many of them. But what happened over the last 2 years was we saw the opportunity in affordable housing. Mm-hmm. And if you think about affordable housing, like most people get a LIHTC, the low income tax credit, right? LIHTC is what LIHTC stands for. You see an email come across your desk from a broker that says LIHTC. Most people just ignore it. They just don't even open the email. They don't know what to do with it. They don't understand it. And me and my partner, Tim Vest, we saw the opportunity in the affordable housing space. And we also kind of latched onto a mentor that kind of held our hand and showed us the way on how to make money in LIHTC. And we have essentially just gone all in on the LIHTC affordable housing space. Our buy box has changed from we want to buy 70s and 80s product and up, market rate, 70, 80 units and up, to we only touch affordable housing, LIHTC affordable housing in North and South Carolina. We typically buy it when it's coming out of the first 15-year initial compliance period. So most of the assets that we're buying today are built in 2005 to 2010. So we're buying quality assets at half the cost of replacement cost. We bought a property down in Mississippi for $75,000 a door, and it was built in 2008, post Katrina standards for the Mississippi region. So for insurance purposes, is much better. We paid $75,000 a door. Rents are like $1,000 to $1,100, and when we put in Section 8 vouchers, we're getting $1,500 to $1,800. So
that is where the rubber meets the road right there. I was going to go right to like, what are you getting in rents at $75K a door? And a lot of listeners are probably familiar with the kind of rule of thumb, 1% rule. If you're getting 1% per unit of your unit cost in monthly rent, in this case, that would be $750 on a $750,000 unit. That's pretty good. Like that's a metric where you can look at like, okay, this deal might start to work. When you're getting the multiples that you're talking about, Tim, that's super exciting. And so, yeah, I'm curious, like, let's start right with, kind of, you mentioned what LIHTC stands for, low income housing tax credit. But when a lot of people hear the words affordable housing, they think it's just kind of a general descriptive term of like, this stuff over here is more affordable than this stuff over here. That's not how you're referencing here. This is an actual qualified, with a government tax program, and the property has to qualify. It has to be new enough, which is one of the things you mentioned. So talk about like, kind of how that whole thing works.
So affordable housing is the main umbrella, right? And there's a lot of different people, right, underneath that umbrella that qualify for affordable housing. You have HAP agreements, you have LIHTC, you have Section 8, you have a bunch of like affordable. All of those are affordable housing. Mm-hmm. The stigma with affordable housing is that it's a D-class asset that's in a war zone, and that's not true. It's just not true. I mean, our motto in our company is not in our company, but between Tim and I, and like why we do the LIHTC stuff, is just because they don't make a lot of money doesn't mean they're bad people, right?
I love that.
And the stigma is the opposite. It's because they make a little bit of money and they don't make a lot of money, they must be bad people. And that's not true. So we buy LIHTC properties typically from the original developer. We don't get any tax credits ourselves. They're phased out over the first 15 years, called the initial compliance period. Developers typically build a LIHTC building because they can get tax credits that they can sell on the open market. It's actually called the broker that would sell your tax credits from a LIHTC deal is actually called a syndicator, which has no relation to what, how we do it. They sell those tax credits to large corporations or big individuals that have tax burdens. And then now they have cash, they have equity because they sold the tax credits. They use that equity to go build a brand new property that has rent income restrictions in order to qualify for affordable housing. And they own it for the affordable housing contract is usually in two segments, or it's always in two segments. You have your initial compliance period of 15 years, and then you have an extended use period, which can range from 15 to 40 years. So the average would be a 15-year and a 15-year, right? So 30 years total in the compliance period. So now they own a property. It's brand new. It's affordable housing. So, you don't have to do any marketing or advertising because you just register your property on the affordable housing websites and tenants just come to you. Because the problem that we have with affordable housing is there's not enough of it. So we have waiting lists at all of our properties because there's nowhere else to go. And more often than not, people are taking their properties out of the affordable housing programs to market rate, which just continues to suppress the supply, and the demand continues to increase, especially with the way that inflation has gone and jobs have, wages have not really kept up with inflation, though they, whatever your opinion is on that, right? So the more people are qualifying for affordable housing, causing more demand for us, where we have to spend less money on marketing and advertising or $0 at all, because, that's just the way that the affordable housing program works.
You mentioned, investors or buyers, owners taking projects out of affordable housing. How does that work specific to that initial period, the 15-year period, and then usually the second 15-year period? Are there restrictions around when that can be done? Because I know that that's a value add, quote unquote, value add strategy. It's actually probably the opposite, really, in reality. When you're taking away affordability, you're arguably taking away quite a bit of value, but you are theoretically adding NOI to the property and adding value to the property. Again, theoretically, right? But
I would agree that you're taking away moral value, right?
Yeah.
But you're increasing financial value.
Yeah. Right.
And that's I want to touch on that real quick before we answer your question. Is the reason that we love what we do is because we can generally help people lower their monthly expenses by helping them get onto Section 8 vouchers. So for an easy math example would be if you have a 50% unit, which means that you can only charge 50% of market rate rent. In order to live in that 50% unit, you can also only make 50% or less of the average median income, right? So they're called set asides. Those, you have 50%, 60%, 30%. There's a bunch of different set aside percentages.
Okay.
So if market rate is 1,000 and average median income is 50K, well, in order to qualify to live at this house or this apartment, you cannot make more than 25,000. But I, as the landlord, can also not charge you more than $500 a month in rent, right?
Sure.
And that's updated annually. So like our budgeted rent increases come directly from the housing authorities, which I like because it takes away speculation in our underwriting files. Because here are the numbers, like it's published, like this is what I can charge. So how we help people, like the win-win scenario for us that makes me enjoy doing what I do. Not only am I making money for myself and my investors, but I'm also helping my residents reduce their expenses, is if I help them get onto a voucher, right? Section 8 voucher, which is a whole nother piece of affordable housing.
Yep.
The resident typically pays 30% of the coupon, right? Or the value of their face value of the voucher, right? So if you get a $800 voucher and they only have to pay 30% of 800 instead of 100% of 500, they're reducing their monthly expenses to, I don't know what the math is. What's the math on that? Like $240, right?
Yep.
30% of 800 would be $240. So we help them reduce their monthly expenses by more than half by helping them get onto a voucher, right?
Yeah.
So morally, it's very high for us, right? Because we're doing the right thing. Financially, it's very high for us because we're increasing the value of the property, and it creates an asset class that has very little competition because it's not the low hanging fruit. Market rate properties are the low hanging fruit. Like there's not like compliance paperwork and all this stuff that you need to do in order to make sure that you're doing the right thing. You can just fill it with whoever. If they can pay and they can meet your background check and your credit checks and all that, and they have the income to support the rent, they can move in, right? That's low hanging fruit. In affordable housing, LIHTC, there's so many hoops that you have to jump through. It's more difficult to own and operate and manage. That's why most people are just like, I don't even want to touch it, right? But that's where the most amount of money is because not that many people touch it. So, I did a presentation at Jennings Smith put on an event called the My First Million in Multifamily in Charleston, South Carolina. And I kind of presented about LIHTC and like how Tim and I are capitalizing on those business plans. And I did an example just to kind of show how little people actually pay attention to affordable housing. And we're in a room of 200 people. I said, okay, if you own real estate, raise your hand. Everyone raises their hand because you're at a real estate conference. Okay. If you own an apartment complex, keep your hand up. Most people kept their hands up. A couple people put their hands down. Okay. Next question is, if you allow Section 8 vouchers at your property, your apartment complex, keep your hand up. Half of those hands go down because not everybody allows Section 8 vouchers to be at your apartment complex. And the last question was, if you own a LIHTC asset, keep your hand up. In a room of 200 people, 2 people had their hand up. And
Amazing.
I said, look around. You see those 2 people with their hand up? That's my competition. You see everybody else with their hands down? That's your competition. And it would just kind of like blew everybody's mind, right?
Yeah.
And especially when you see it. And a lot of people start looking at LIHTC, but it's still very, very, very difficult. And this is a great segue into like how we got to where we are today is there's not many property management companies that know how to operate LIHTC correctly. That's the biggest barrier to entry is operations, right? So lo and behold, that's how we, kind of segue into this conversation is we're a fully integrated organization now. We have LIHTC compliance, we have property management, we have construction, we raise our own money, we sign our own debt. I mean, we're a full-fledged operation now that formed a little over a year ago in order to go all in on LIHTC affordable housing.
So, I mean, going vertical on, especially, let's just talk about the PM piece for a minute. I mean, that is no small thing. It is, especially depending on kind of where your portfolio was at the time. But and I want to talk, you mentioned having a mentor in this, and I would imagine that would have been, given the intricacies of the process and the hoops you got to jump through, I would imagine that would have been incredibly important and valuable. But I mean, talk about going vertical, because it's something comes up a lot, right? Are you third party or are you vertical? It's kind of like a club almost in the space. What was that like, Tim?
I mean, it really sets apart the people that are going to be in this industry for the long run and those that are dabbling because they see social media, people flashing all their new cars and how much money they're making. And, this is that. And the other thing that we saw over the last 2-3 years, those that really go in and go vertical they're in it, right? You're 2 feet in, you're not focused on every new opportunity, shiny object that comes up across the table. And that really, it is a club, right? Because it really kind of sets you apart from, am I doing this for fun or am I doing this as a business?
Yeah.
And the reason that we went vertical was because we couldn't find a property management company that would manage LIHTC assets as well as we knew how to and how we could, right? So that was the first problem. The second problem was third-party management companies are in it for profit. And I'm not in management for profit. I make money in my real estate, right? We still have a lot of the same expense line items, but I don't charge my properties a markup for those same things. So my expenses have gone down 20-30% just because I'm not charging a 20-30% markup on everything. Right. It's
Right.
not that I do it cheaper because I'm not trying to make money. I'm not trying to maximize my profit. Right. So that's kind of the mindset there. And then also it really has helped us attract equity, right? In the form of family offices, in the form of private equity firms, in the form of a lot more private investors. I think Tim and I over the last 3 years have raised somewhere between 40 and $50 million from
Nice.
private equity,
Wow.
family office, private investors.
Yeah.
And most of that from Facebook, to be honest with you. I mean,
Amazing.
don't shame on Facebook, right? I know a lot of
No.
people are like, oh, it's a social network. I'm like, yes. How do you think I socialize with people that have money?
Right.
um,
Yep.
but anyways, yeah. So we started the property management company. It is hands down the most difficult thing I've ever done. Like I
Mm.
thought 2-3 years ago when I was getting into commercial real estate, I thought buying real estate was hard. Holy moly. Like
Yep.
buying real estate and raising money is so easy now compared to operating deals on a day-to-day basis, making sure that the business plan is being implemented correctly,
Mhm.
making sure that your company has a good culture and systems and processes. And, the biggest problem that we have is people, right? And it's
Mhm.
like, well, I thought the biggest problem I had was buying real estate. Well, no, those opportunities are everywhere. It's making sure that you can execute on the business plan now that has just gotten it. I spend 80-90% of my time on the operations of our assets now rather than the acquisitions.
How do you, I mean, I just to be totally like, just to dive right in, do you like it? I mean, the 80-90% of your time
Love
in
hate.
operations that's full-time job, right? I mean,
Yep.
so yeah, so love hate. Okay.
Love hate. It's a means to an end, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Yeah.
like as we continue to grow our size and operations and scale, it enables us to hire more people, right? So it's like, I know I'm working a lot now, but I
Yeah.
couldn't get to where I want to go without doing the sacrifice now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a lot of people think, you buy a property, you give it to a third party manager and you walk away and you forget about it. Well, that's mostly true, right? But the speed and the cost of doing so is significantly less. Like, we just bought a portfolio of 12 properties, and 3 of those properties were 80% vacant day one.
Hmm.
It took us 45 days to turn around 3 of those properties. And now we're at least like we did all the construction, we did all the maintenance, we did full renovation, interior, exterior, roofs, everything in 40 days,
How many
right?
units? How many units was that portfolio?
It's like 500 or something like that. But
Yeah. Wow.
the 3 vacant ones was a total of like maybe 130,
That's a
right?
big lease up. Yeah.
Well, but the construction flew by, right? Now we're in the
Mm.
lease up phase, and we have a company
Okay.
goal of being 90% occupied by September 15th. I don't know if we'll hit that or not, but that's kind of like how we're trying to drive towards it. But that same property, if I gave it to a third party manager, wouldn't have the same time and attention to detail and speed if they kind of fitted into their portfolio when they had time to. But when I buy it and it's my employees, we say, okay, we can't forget about this other portfolio over here, but everyone's time and attention for the next month, the next sprint needs to be to take care of these properties, do all of these things. I need somebody to be on site every other day, checking on XYZ things, call, we had a list of everything that needed to be done, and we delegated it out and said, okay, everybody call and get 3 different quotes. Let's, get them over there as fast as possible. Right. So the speed, the velocity of money in that scenario is so significant. It's so significant because
Mm.
we're going to be 6 months down the road and looking at a refinance when most people budget it to take 2 years, right, to
Right.
do something like
Right.
that. So it's a
Yeah.
means to an end because it gives you the flexibility to implement the velocity of capital, like truly implement the velocity of capital.
Well, and I mean, one thing I hadn't thought of until you brought it up a few minutes back is just, I mean, straight up value injection that you're giving the property by keeping your NOI down, by controlling your expenses the way you are. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like, boom, that's like, you know, mind blowing stuff to me right there. Cause we've looked at it with 8 properties in our portfolio at the moment, soon to be 9. We're, in 4 years into it, essentially, we've certainly looked at what it might look like to go vertical. And in that said, we've had, the way our team's been set up, we've just had our hands full on the acquisitions side and the asset management side. And, to do asset management well, when you have third party is also considered, it's not 80-90%, not even close, but I mean, you're essentially a supervisor role, checking in, kind of hovering, if you will, over the PM's shoulder, just making sure the business plan gets implemented. And I mean, it's you have leverage, right? You're essentially their customer, and they are responding to you and your directives and your business plan, ideally. But it's so different than what you're talking about, where it's your baby, it's your ownership. But the opportunity there to, like you said, velocity of money, and then just straight ROI. I mean, it's tremendous. And like you said, I've talked to numerous people about this. You're never doing that piece for extra income, right? Extra bottom line. You're doing it because of the way that it influences the other parts of your bottom line, if you will. Yeah.
It's control. It's control the controllables, right? The things that we cannot control are taxes, insurance, and debt. Everything else we can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said.
With the other, before we move on, the one thing that changed my mindset to exactly where you were was we had a conversation with our mentor, me and Tim, right? And this was more Tim Vest specifically, not me, but he was listening to Tim Vest on a property management call, third-party property management call. And he continually challenged us and said, why don't you go vertical? Why don't you go vertical? And we're like, we don't really want to be in day-to-day management. He goes, but the conversation that you just had with your property manager is the exact same conversation that I have with my employees. It's no different. You are doing operations and asset management literally at the same time. It could not be a better use of your time because you're doing both at the same time.
Yeah. You're already doing it. If
you look at it that way, you're like, holy crap, I didn't think about it that way. But like when you're doing asset management, what are the questions you're asking your property management company? How many guest cards do we have? How many vacants do we have? What are the turn costs going to be? When are they going to be ready? I mean, you can keep going down the list, right?
Yep.
What do the questions look like when you're talking to your head of property management, your regional manager, whatever? How many vacants do we have? Do we have the construction crews lined up? How much is going to cost to do them? How's our leasing activity? Have we paid all the bills, right?
Mm-hmm.
The conversation is literally the same. Your definition of asset management and the definition of owning and operating a property management company should be the same, because it's controlling the outcome with the same conversation, instead of you talking to the property manager and then the property manager talking to all their property managers and construction guys. No, we have everybody on the same call. I say the one thing once and everybody hears it from the horse's mouth, and nobody has questions on, well, how do they want me to do that? Or what do they want to do it this way or that way? No, we gave clear instructions and just go do it now, right? You lose that middleman, which is the best thing to happen for you in terms of time, speed, and efficiency, because nothing's lost in translation.
Super powerful, man. I mean, when you put it that way, there's so much of that just kind of falls into place. And I mean, the fact that, like you say, if you're doing asset management well, you have to have your finger on the pulse of everything you just went through. And so why not do that with somebody that's employed by you, that's depending on you for their livelihood, and who could lose their job if they don't do what you just went through, right? Versus
we've had a
third-party manager, like they screw up, they don't do what they say they're going to do. Number one, it's super painful for you to find somebody else to replace them. So they've got security there. Number two, even if you did fire them and replace them, they've still got their company, they still got their job. Like you get just tremendous amount more leverage in scenario one with an employee or a site manager or regional manager, however you have that set up.
Yeah, I mean, from a third-party manager's perspective, like, we might lose some revenue, some income, but I just go find another property, right? They don't, the stress that I have is the debt service going to be paid? Where's the money coming for that? What are my investor returns looking like? How are we, there's so many other things that are related to asset management rather than just property management. But that conversation is what guides everything to solve all of those problems all at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your, before I ask, I want to ask about your team, but before we ask about your team, talk about your portfolio at this point, Tim, what, numbers
so we own
go ahead.
Probably, over 2,000 units now.
Okay. Yeah.
Honestly, I don't even really keep track of it.
You're not a unit count guy.
I'm not a unit count guy. I'm a how much money I got in the bank guy, right? Like So we probably own over 2,000 units combined now, but we're managing about 12 or 1,400 of them.
Okay. Yeah.
Something I don't know, something around those lines.
You have some third party left over from before you were integrated?
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense for us to take some of the properties back. They're just too small in markets that are too far away. We don't have the economies of scale. Maybe they do a great job, right? I mean, there's a lot. Don't get me wrong. Third party property managers are not the devil, right? They serve a purpose. They can do a good job, but it's changed our acquisition model and what we pay attention to going forward, because we're like, okay, well, what else do we own in the area? And if we have, property that's 20 minutes down the street, can we actually get that part-time employee to go full-time and then split their payroll between two properties instead of one?
Yeah. Efficiencies of scale there. I would think that geographic setup, would become quite important when you're.
It is absolutely important. So right now we only focus on buying assets in North and South Carolina because of it.
That's still a pretty big. I mean, those are two big states. Like, my dad lives in Pinehurst. I've been there.
I guess it's within a 3 to 4 hour radius around Charlotte.
Okay,
because
there you go.
That gets you up to Raleigh. It gets you down to Greenville, South Carolina. We own stuff in Columbia.
Great markets,
around the Charlotte area, right? Yeah. So anybody that works for us can go there in an hour or two and be back the same day.
Okay. Yeah. So, and then structure wise, I would think you have an on-site, probably a single like boss on-site manager at each property. Is that or each portfolio, if you will?
Yeah. So each property, we won't buy it unless we can manage it with it's got to have enough units where we can manage it with an on-site property manager.
Yeah.
On-site maintenance depends on the quality of the asset. I mean, sometimes it's cheaper just to third party out, like to a handyman, work orders, and
especially
things
with
like that.
The vintage that you're talking about. I mean, you're getting 10-year-old proproperties. I mean, that's
15 years.
Nice.
We buy it after the 15-year initial compliance, so they're about 15 years old.
Got it.
But yeah, I mean, so the main things that we deal with on the maintenance side of things are we got to do paint and flooring, HVACs, and roofs. That's where we spend our money now, right? Yeah. Paint and flooring, HVACs, and roofs.
And hopefully with the HVACs and roofs, you're getting maybe getting a little more than 15 years out of those guys.
Well, most roofs and HVAC systems are on a 20-year cycle. Yeah. Right. Yeah, so we're buying it around 15, 16, 17 years old. You're right there. You're right. So like when we're buying something, we're budgeting to replace the roofs. We're budgeting to replace 50, 60, 70% of the HVAC systems.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's one of the nice things about buying something that is, 15 years old in this case. Like, I mean, you bake it in, right? Like, okay, 15-year-old roof, 15-year-old mechanicals, like,
right. Well, so I mean, when you're buying the 70s and 80s stuff, you're like, all right, I'm going to budget $12,000-$15,000 to renovate a unit. I'm like, well, for me, it's $5,000, right? Because I'm like, okay, it's $1,500 to paint, $3,000 for flooring, and then $500 for other stuff, right? Yeah. Maybe it's an appliance, maybe it's a countertop, maybe it's a toilet, who knows, right? But like our renovation costs look different because one, we're not paying markup because our construction crews, right, are in-house. And two, the scope of what we have to do is significantly less. Yeah. Same with HVAC. I mean, the only thing that we really have outsourced now is roofs. So like we don't have a roofing company, but we do have like maintenance guys that are HVAC certified to replace our HVAC systems too.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, how did the team look when you started? Like,
great question.
Going from third party outsourced management to, maybe your first property or your first set of properties being vertical. What did you put in place at that point? And then how has it grown since then?
So it was just me, Tim, and then we found a regional manager. Her name's Crystal. She's got 30 plus years of LIHTC experience. It's the only thing she's ever done.
Wow.
So it was the three of us. We brought on from third-party managers. We brought on about 250 of our own units, kind of managed those for like 90 days, 120 days. And then we turned the faucet on and started doing acquisitions and buying stuff and taking other properties back from third-party managers, just because we could. So it was the three of us. With every property, we would hire an on-site manager and typically a maintenance guy, or we would have contractors lined up, to do the work orders and things like that. Today, we have Crystal is now the VP of the property management company. We have 2 regional managers. We're looking for a 3rd regional manager, and we have, oh gosh, I don't know. There's like almost 30 people in the organization now. So I don't know the split between property managers and maintenance guys and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Sure.
We also have a construction manager. His name's Tony. So Tony is responsible for kind of when we onboard a new property. He does he helps us with the inspections. He's the one that's meeting contractors on site. He's inspecting the work to make sure the roof is done correctly. He's kind of helps us with the scheduling and kind of maintenance costs and negotiating contracts and all that kind of stuff. So we have Tim still very active in the business. I do a lot of accounting, financial work, insurance work, all that kind of stuff. We have 3 CPAs that work for us, bookkeepers that are CPAs that work for us. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good scope.
Little different direction here, but I'm just like hyper curious about it. I can tell that, especially when you speak about the let's just say moral impact, for lack maybe of a better word, of your business model and what you guys are up to, and like the good that you're doing, particularly for communities and residents. Is that, when you talked about that, I could tell there's a lot of satisfaction there for you, a lot of what I call juice, right? Like there's some juice there for you in that part of the business. What it sounds to me also like you're doing things right now, like Alex Hormozy would call them unscalable, right? You're doing the tough things right now to build, and maybe now you're coming out of it a little more, but like when you guys went vertical, it was just the 3 of you, right? And so you're doing all kinds of things that eventually you would develop the human resources to do and the systems and processes to do, so that they're no longer falling on you. That's like doing the unscalable in the Hormozy world, right? So, and it sounds like maybe you're still doing some of that, but I'm curious, Tim, just like where's the juice for you in this whole thing? Because you guys have an incredible organization, you have an amazing portfolio, great team, and you guys are for 2 years since we've talked, like what you've been able to do and put together is unbelievable. It's awesome. Like what fires you up, man? Something's got to really excite you about this, or you wouldn't be doing what you're doing.
So I love the opportunity that we have and kind of the lack of competition. Because, I can sit here on this podcast and tell you exactly what to do, but nobody's going to do anything with it because the barrier to entry is so very hard still. So I love that. Like our deal flow, our deal pipeline is so full that I don't even know what to do with all the deals. Right. Wow. But what really juices me up about it is the control of everything, because we got a lot of family money, right? We got money, family money, relative money, friends money, the general feedback. So one of the biggest juices for me is like the biggest feedback is that there's been a lot of people that have lost money in syndications over the last 2 years because they went to some capital raiser. Some capital raiser made a connection with some operator, typically in Texas. I don't know why I always Texas, but they made a relationship who said, "Hey, we met at a conference. I like you. You like me. Let's do a deal. I'll raise some money. I'll put some money into your deal." Over the last 2-3 years, money was everywhere, right? So it was very easy to raise money. But what's happened is those people that were just buying deals with bad debt and et cetera and so forth and using third-party managers, their operations fell flat. And now they're starting to give the keys back because, it's gotten very, very difficult and they haven't been so specific about exercising their business plan, right? So it's coming back to bite them because they haven't executed. And those people, those investors that lost money through a capital raiser that went and placed it with somewhere else have come to me and they're like, I'm not investing in anybody else's deal unless it's Tim and Tim. And I'm like, well, that's great, but why? And he said, because you're the operator. You are assigning the debt. You are putting your money into the deals. You're putting your family money into the deals. You're putting your friends' money into the deals. You guys now are big enough to work with a family office. You're big enough to work with a private equity fund. If they have vetted you enough to give you millions of dollars, then what you're doing must be good. And therefore, I want to invest with you and continue to invest with you. And now when we put something out to our portal, capital raising is very easy because I have built these relationships over the last 3 to 5 years, and it's continued to grow and grow and grow and grow. And now we're starting to see a lot of deals go full cycle and provide returns, even in a down market, still providing 25, 35% average annual returns. And those people are just like, don't even give me the money back. Just here, take it all and put it in the next thing.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of that realization, that juice is the realization of everything that I thought could be possible 5, 6 years ago is possible because I didn't get shiny object syndrome. I picked apartments. I stayed with apartments. Sure, our asset class is still apartments, and we've kind of narrowed it down into a specific class, our subset of multifamily. But we've gone all in on the business. We've gone all in on ourselves. We've gone all in with our mentors. We've implemented the things that people have told us to do, and the results are the juice, which the investors, the private equity funds, the social media world is starting to see. They're just like, oh man, like I do remember you from years ago being all over the place, and you're doing it, man. Like you're doing what everybody kind of set out to coach about and talk about and mentor about. You're doing it. And how many people have we seen rise as coaches and are amazed, that they make more money coaching than they do in real estate. And, me personally, yeah, sure. I do have a coaching subset, right? Because people reach out to me and they want to learn how to do what I do, but I don't market it. I don't like push it out there. It's not how I make money. It's something that I offer if you're interested in learning about it, but it's not something that I'm not known to be a real estate coach. Right. And I think that's the better, more genuine way to go about it. So it's the ability to help our investors, the ability to help other people like stay focused in the industry and set goals and accomplish them. And ultimately be the person that I wish I had as a coach or mentor and like somebody that I can invest money with.
Super powerful. Yeah. I think to summarize what I hear is like, there's a confidence in what there's a confidence that you have that's a product of the process you've been through, the growth you've had, the mentorship you've had, what you've built. That's really where it is like the systems and processes you built, the buy box you built, the relationships you built, and then specifically your operations that gives you like a knowledge, not just confidence, but like a knowledge that you can deliver to your investors on what you're telling them that you can deliver on, what you're not promising, because it's never a promise in investing, but like what you're projecting, what you're saying with authority and credibility, like we're going to be able to make this happen. These are the numbers that you can expect. Like you guys have the ability, because you control every part, to be able to say that with authority and confidence. And I would think that would be incredibly satisfying. It
is absolutely satisfying, right? And it's the conversation that I have with people all the time is hold me accountable to the things that I can control. Don't hold me accountable to the things that I can't. And we've seen that most over tax, insurance, and debt, right? We've made the best decisions that we can in order to kind of mitigate some of those risks. But ultimately, not every deal is a winner, because of what's happened in the insurance world, right? I mean, we've had insurance policies go up 300%. And then, I had a renewal come up at the end of this month and it went up another 30% from there. And it's like, nobody in their right mind could ever underwrite that your insurance will go from $700 a unit to $2,100. Like nobody would put it in an underwriting file. But what I can say is, because we were able to execute on the business plan, the deal isn't going under. Right. And that's key, because a lot of people that are losing deals right now is because they didn't focus on the business plan in order to keep up with the rent growth and, everything that needed to be successful. Because the taxes and the insurance and debt went up, they're not able to refinance or not able to sell because they haven't kept up the top line growth with the expense growth, right?
Right.
So yeah, so you're right. Not every deal is guaranteed. No deal is guaranteed. My underwriting still is speculative because that's the nature of it. Hold me accountable to the things that I can control, but there is always an exposed risk to taxes going up, to insurance going up, and to debt changing. And I have literally no control over that.
I love though the mitigation that you guys have that somebody that's not only vertical but really good at being vertical doesn't have, which is your ability to like really drive your expenses down in a way that somebody else doing this exact same thing with a third party or whatever couldn't do. And that, I mean, that lever right there, yeah, you can't control the taxes, insurance, debt, but you can control that, and that can mitigate those other three things.
Yeah, and one of the other reasons I'm glad that you brought it up about like mitigating expenses. And one of the other main reasons why I love affordable products is most people don't know this, but in the biggest three expenses that you pay are taxes, insurance, and debt, right? In the affordable space, you're protected with two out of the three. So there's favorable property tax treatment. Like, it's assessed not on its sale price, it's assessed on its income at a favorable cap rate. I mean, we've had cap rate assessments at like 10, 12, 14% in order to get your taxable value.
Wow. Yeah.
And then debt, I mean, you have affordable HUD products, FHA loans, all that other kind of stuff. Local regional banks, agency loans, they all have an affordable bucket of money that they have to deploy, typically at 50 to 100 basis points less than what you can get for market rate property, which means you can get better leverage, which means they also have lower debt coverage ratio requirements because the income is a bit more stable. It's more guaranteed, if you would. So they allow you to have a little bit better leverage with lower rate. I mean, all of that is favorable stuff. The only place that we're exposed now really is insurance, because insurance companies look at anything that's Section 42 and say, well, statistically, Section 42 properties have more claims. Therefore, if it's Section 42, I'm not going to put an insurance policy on it. So more often than not, we find ourselves getting really banged up on insurance because insurance companies just don't want to write the policies. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I can control my taxes. I can control my debt. And I'm mitigating risk on the taxes and the debt. I can control my expenses. I can control my income. I have really no control over the insurance costs. But the only way that I've been able to kind of mitigate any insurance rise is we set up a master insurance policy. And some of our properties had like $400 or $500 a month reductions in price per unit per year. So it's like we're doing literally anything and everything that you can in order to make sure that your deal is successful. And again, not every deal is a winner. I mean, we're probably going to sell some deals just to break even. But I mean, how can you underwrite your insurance being, $20,000 going to $80,000? You can't, right? Yeah. That's $60,000 increase in NOI. It would take you 10, 20 years to make up the difference, right? Yeah. And if you had a 20-year outlook, it wouldn't really matter. But most of the deals, in our world are 3 to 5 years. We have time constraints. It's just not going to be possible to make money on that deal because of what happened in insurance, right? So, not every deal is a winner, right? And that's why, when people invest money with us too, I tell them, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like that. That's why I do what I do, because you can look at me like your stock investment portfolio. You can put $50,000, $100,000 here. And one might be a winner. One might be a break even. One might be a loser. One might be a single. One's a double, right? Not every deal is going to be a home run, right? So it's a mitigation of risk thing. And people really starting to understand that because I've been in the game for a long time now. We're working with a lot of different, equity groups and financial advisors. I mean, and all this other kind of stuff, right? So they're like, you know what? I do believe and trust that you are doing everything possible in order to make sure that this deal is a deal. And, we've had some tough conversations with investors and they're upset, and rightfully so. And I'm upset too. I'm like, hey, we've been operating this deal for 3 years. I haven't made $1, right? But it's like, if you were in this position where you owned the deal yourself, not in a syndication, not as a limited partner, not with any vote, if you own this deal yourself, you would be in the exact same position. And it's not because I'm not a good operator. It's because things changed that are out of my control.
Yeah. And unforeseeable things. You know,
Right.
at Greenlight, my company, we just have a dedication and what I consider to be like almost a sacred obligation or a sacred trust that's been put in us by two groups of people, our residents and our investors. And I was just sitting here listening to you kind of go through that last bit, and it occurred to me like you have built everything in such a way and really have spared no expense or cut any corners in a way that you can like deliver the very, very best of what you can offer to those two groups of people in your world, your residents and your investors.
Mm-hmm.
You are like doing them right, Tim. Like,
That's it. Right. And
yeah,
that's the driving force,
yeah,
right? What is
yeah,
the question always is, what is the right thing to do?
yeah,
And
yeah,
that has to be the decision-making
yeah,
process.
yeah.
Whether it's at your gain or at your detriment, doesn't matter. What is the right thing to do here?
There's election year stuff and whatnot, and you get into. I mean, there's always a general kind of cynicism around landlords and property owners, and especially when you get bigger and institutional and whatnot, and the greed and the selfishness and just people jacking rents and kicking people out, and like everybody that has a cynical perspective on the way that landlords do business and property owners and investors do business, like should listen to this episode. To me, this is a blueprint of how to do this business right. Now, is there one way to do it right? Absolutely not. But you guys have cracked a code on a model that is just remarkable. And I love that we have the before and after reference here on the show with the 2 episodes. And for listeners, like, look what you can do in 2 years, right? Like you hear the adage that we often greatly overestimate what we can do in a year, but greatly underestimate what we can do in, say, 3-5 years, right? And in Tim's case, 2 years, they're building an empire, right? And it's very, very inspiring. Kind of close things up here with a practical question. People that want to learn more about LIHTC and really like get their heads around what the hoops are, what the requirements are, the languaging, the terminology, like any good places to start there?
I really don't have any recommendations because it's just been on the job training. It's not hey, maybe you just gave me the idea. Maybe I need to be the one that writes a book about it.
I mean, really, like, I mean, if there's no resources, then that's something.
There's no resources.
Yeah.
I mean, this more of a shameless plug. There are no resources about learning about affordable housing, but we are coaches, right? We have a coaching program called Making Moves in Multifamily Mentorship. We teach people how to do everything, right? How to start a property management company, how to buy deals, how to build your deal flow pipeline. We've raised $50 million. Like we do it all, right? I couldn't think of a better coaching group to be part of because we don't advertise it really. I mean, we talk about it like we are here, but it's not like I have ads running in order to push you out to try to get you as a coaching student, because that's not my goal is. I only want people to reach out if they're actually invested, like they want to be invested into it. But yeah, I mean, if reach out on Facebook is usually the best way to get me. I really don't go.
You read my mind. I was just going to where. Yeah, how do people get a hold of you? Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook, man. Yeah. Honestly, Making Moves in Multifamily is the group. You can add me on Facebook. Though I probably am at a friend limit. I typically go through and delete people eventually if they don't like engage with me or whatever. But I would say that's probably the best place to get a hold of me for sure.
Awesome. Tim, man, great stuff, dude. I'm like, I mean, I knew this was going to be a good episode. I had no idea that I had 5% idea of what you've been up to the last 2 years. And this has just been a revelation. So congratulations on everything. Anything notable? What's next? Or is it just kind of like stay in the course and work in the system?
I mean, we're close. So this year we've bought maybe 20 properties and we're kind of turning the faucet off at the end of September. We're really going to we've worked with a mentor and a coach and a consultant, and we're really going to work on our operations to bring it to the next level so that I can work on the business instead of in the business as much. So we're making tweaks and changes, and really we need to spend time focusing on those types of things in order to continue our success. Like you get to a certain plateau and then it's like, okay, well, how do I get to the next plateau? And this is one of those things where we're taking a couple steps back in order to make the next run up. And that's, getting rid of some of the properties that are non-performers, that are the ones that are difficult, that are never going to make money. And it's like, just, give me a fast no instead of a long maybe. So it's, it's like trying to analyze the portfolio. We're hitting a bunch of refinances the end of this year and early next year. And we're just, we're getting it for the next run up, man. Like we're looking to hire like a CFO. We're looking to hire an operations person, all of those types of things in order to bring our organization to the next level. Cause like, as a real estate investor, which I am at my core, I'm not a property manager at my core. I want to focus on deals and money, right? Deals and money. That's what grows my business. And operations are absolutely necessary, but I'm trying to get better at hiring myself out of a job so I can focus on those two things and not the operations.
There you go. Awesome stuff. Dude, thank you so much, Tim.
You're welcome.
Being on the show. Awesome episode. Listeners, hopefully there's just tons of nuggets in there for you, whether it's specific ideas or just a general inspiration for how to like be excellent at multiple facets of a tough business. Like I don't think anybody in my world, and certainly not Tim, would ever like tell you this is easy stuff. In fact,
oh God, no, it's the hardest thing I ever did.
It's really hard stuff. And to do what you guys have done, which again is like doing all that unscalable work that eventually you build into the who, not how, or the systems and processes, right? But I mean, it's on you from the beginning, and you guys did some heavy lifting, and it sounds like you're still doing a lot of heavy lifting. And but I mean, look at the results and look at the lives that you're impacting at the end of the day. That's awesome, man.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Always good catching up. And hey, let's do this again in 2 years.
You bet. Let's do it. I love it. Listeners, thank you. Hopefully this was a banger for you. It was for me. And we try to do this every week and bring you just the highest impact, highest value guests and information, inspiration that we can. And to me, this is a blueprint right here. Like, and whether or not you take it and copy it or take it and use it as a inspiration for a completely different model, be excellent, right? Be excellent. Do the hard stuff and be excellent. So, Tim, thanks again, man. Good stuff.
Hey, man. Thanks, Tate. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everybody.
This has been the Apartment Gurus with Tate Siemer. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. To contact Tate, go to www.investwithgreenlight.com for access to his investor portal and Calendly link. He loves to hear from you and thanks you for being a valued listener. Just a reminder that you are the guru. See you on the next episode of the Apartment Gurus.